Women's FIDE Grand Prix Series being played in Kostenuik, Russia from April 7th to April 22nd, 2014. I don't think the women get nearly enough credit they deserve. This is one of the Grand Prix series of tournaments leading up to the challenger for the current Women's World Champion. Great chess. Don't miss any of this action. Hi folks, John Kostenuik back again with another live video for you. This is another game from round 2 of the Women's FIDE Grand Prix, a series of tournaments to determine the challenger for the Women's World Championship. It's between Alexandra Kostenuik, former Women's World Champion, and Tatiana, see if I can butcher this name, Kosintseva, something like that. We'll call it Alexandria is white and Tatiana is black. It's going to be a 2 nights. So, Backyard Professor, if you're listening, here we are. World-class level women playing the 2 nights, the openings you're going through. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, Bishop C4. Does this look familiar, Backyard Professor? These are the openings you're going through, and they're playing this at world-class level. Knight to F6. And white plays knight to G5. Attacking the F7 pawn, which is a weak point in the Gucko piano, 2 knights. D5. The only response. E takes D. And knight to A5, which is the response to this opening. White plays bishop to B5 check. To move the bishop C6. D takes C. And B takes C. Now as you can see, the bishop can't take, forking the king and the rook because the knight's protecting that pawn. Bishop comes back to D3, which I really don't like, to be honest with you, unless you're going to fee and kettle this bishop, because this bishop's going to have a hard time getting out. We'll see how it works out. Knight to D5. Putting the knight in the center square, control a lot of space, and at the same time a discovered attack on white's knight. H4. Protecting the knight and making some advances on the king side. Black goes knight to F4. White plays bishop F1. Moves it back. It's got to protect the pawn here. And it's back where it started. I'm not real, excuse me, I'm not real thrilled with that. Somehow went wrong for Alexandra. Unless this is all deep theory that I don't know about. H6, kicking the knight. Knight goes to E4. That's a good space for that knight, right in the center of the board, covering a lot of key squares. Knight to E6. Moves the knight back. And the knight goes to G3. When they said this is a 2 knights opening, they weren't kidding. It's the same 2 knights round and round and round. Bishop C5 check. Or excuse me, bishop C5, not check. C3. And knight to B7. Here comes the other knight back around. These 2 knights and this knight have been quite a journey. Sorry about that, but I'm reading off the paper here. I'm used to doing my videos with a computer board. B4. Kick the bishop. Bishop goes to B6. It wants to stay on this diagonal on the king side. As we all can tell by now, of course, white's not going to castle on the king side. Knight to A3. That's the way she gets out her knight. And then A5. This is an interesting position, I got to tell you, for real. This A2 pawn is not good. I don't know how she's going to handle that. White goes knight to C4. Bishop c7 puts the bishop back again, mostly to defend the e5 pawn. B takes A, knight takes. Now, let's just take a look at this position quickly here. This A2 pawn, yeah, it's passed. I'm not real thrilled with it. It's going to be hard to defend. After knight takes A5, knight to E3. There go the knights again. You know, this shouldn't be the two knights. This should be the 22. Black castles. Bishop A3. I usually go over my games. This one I haven't gone over yet, so this is all new to me too. So I'm reacting just the same as you would watching the video. In C5, blocking the attack on the rook, and cutting some key squares, controlling these two here. Bishop B5. Finally comes the bishop again. He finally gets to come back out. Knight to B7. Bishop B2. We're doing a lot of minor piece maneuver in this game, that's for sure. Knight to D6. Here comes the knight again. And bishop to E2. Comes the bishop again. F5. Now this is looking pretty good for black here. Just to recap, Alexander Kostenuik, former women's world champion, is white, and Tatiana Kosintseva is black. Hope I didn't lose my place here. I'm used to doing this on the computer. Bear with me a moment. Here we go. Knight C4. There goes the knight again. They're doing some serious calculating, these ladies, because they're moving these minor pieces all over the place. So it's really tough. And here come the pawns. F4. Knight takes knight. And she doesn't take back with the bishop. She takes the knight on F and G3. Knight takes the bishop, which never moved. Pawn takes check. This is getting crazy. Here we go. We're off here. King to F1. And queen takes. Let's recap this now. Look at white's king. This bishop, or excuse me, rook is bearing right down, guarding the pawn. That king's in a bad spot. Bad spot. Let's see how Kostenuik makes out here. Bishop C4, pinning the knight against the king. Of course, she moves the king. And queen to G4. Now white's counterattacking. You know, it's funny when you get a pawn like this. It's like a traitor almost. It's almost like a traitor because it's actually guarding. It's protecting the white king. Black plays queen to B7. And this is where Kostenuik, I think, makes a mistake. The computer gives her a double question mark. Bishop C1. I think she was getting too fancy for her own good. How was she going to guard that? Bishop, it's hard to say. The computer calls for instead bishop takes E6. But she went bishop C1. I think that was the beginning and the end for her. Knight to F4. D3. What else can she do? And here comes the pawns. E4. It's looking pretty tough. I mean, look at white's king. Queen's coming down. These pawns are coming down. This knight is here. Tough, tough, tough. Bishop E3. Attacking the pawn and blocking the advance of that pawn. She comes down with queen to B2. Good Lord, look what's coming. Look how backed up White is. It's amazing. The former women's world champion. She's having a bad day apparently. Rook to D1. H5. And that, my friends, is really the end. Kostenuik should probably resign. As you can see, the queen's guarding the E2 square, and queen goes there, mate. So what can she do? She has to attack the black queen. So queen just takes. Rook takes. H takes. White is doomed. She's down a full piece. D takes. E4. And look at this slick move. The last move of the game. Can you find it for black? The winning move. No matter what White does after this. White is doomed. Knight to H5. How pretty is that? The king can't escape. The king moves here. Knight comes here, picks up the rook. If the king doesn't move, knight comes here and mates. So that's when Kosintseva threw in the towel and resigned. I thought that was a heck of a game. You might want to go over it a little bit slower. I only allowed 15 minutes on YouTube until next month. So I've got to run through the games a little bit quicker than I usually do. This was a great game. I wanted to put it on here before it got too old and people saw other videos with it. Anyway, folks, that's a great game from round 2 of the FIDE Women's Grand Prix 2014. I hope you liked it. I want you all to please subscribe. And also I want you to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.